Okay, fellas, you ready for album number 3 here?
Are you going to read any of the titles that you found?
Oh, no, I'll save that for your newbie corner, Josh.
Okay.
The humor that comes with watching Josh say, I'm going to go into my area right here. Just, yeah, well, I'll see if I can find that, Josh. I'll share it next week. Sound good?
Sounds
I'm
good.
afraid my browser will explode if I look up some of those, so, yeah. Okay, well, album number 3, also very different than the ones we've covered today. It's going to be My Bloody Valentine, our first time covering them. And today we're going to be covering Loveless.
Nope.
Josh?
I made that mistake
I'm sorry,
last
Isn't
time.
Anything. I apologize.
Yep.
Isn't Anything. First album, Isn't Anything. We'll be doing Loveless in 1991, and we'll be doing a bio there as well. But, yep. So, in fact, we're going to be doing all 3 My Bloody Valentine albums, each in a different decade, which I think is very interesting.
Oh, cool.
But,
Oh, yeah, look at that.
I do believe that I put Feed Me With Your Kiss in the montage, correct, Josh? And now you're going to hear When You Wake, You're Still in a Dream?
Flip that in
Flip
reverse.
that, okay. So now you're going to hear Feed Me With Your Kiss.
Yep.
Okay, and you did hear parentheses, When You Wake, parenthesis end, You're Still in a Dream in the montage,
Correct.
so I apologize. All right, so
There you go.
My
I'll get some numbers in here, John, before
go
you
for it.
before you go. So, Isn't Anything by My Bloody Valentine comes in at number 66 in the 1980s on Best Ever Albums, number 6 in 1988, and number 461 of all time. It is My Bloody Valentine's second highest rated album behind 1991's Loveless, which we keep thinking we're covering this week, but we're not.
Trust me, I listened to Isn't Anything. I just, in
Yes,
my mind,
that's good.
they're synonymous with each
That's
other.
my
So, yeah.
that's my job, is to listen to the wrong album. And My Bloody Valentine, wow, ranked number 36 of overall artist rankings on Best Ever Albums. 36.
Give me a break.
One of
There are
the
only
more
35 better
influential-
artists ever
One
in
of
the
more
world, Josh.
influential bands in alternative music
Yeah.
of the last 35 years,
Really?
as we'll talk about a little bit for sure. All right, so let's start with one thing to know is that the version of this band that record it now had many changes before it happened. But I'm going to give you the version that was on this album. You've got founding members. There's 2 of them. You've got Kevin Shields, who is on one of the vocalists, the male vocalist, and guitar. He also does some of the electronic work. And then I made it a point to make sure that I got the pronunciation correct on this because it's a very Irish name. It is Colm Oakishog. Sometimes Okeesog. It's got a little bit of Gaelic in it, so it's not as easy for the American tongue to go. But definitely Colm Okeesog is the best version of it. I did do my homework. I am not just throwing that out there. There's a couple different people who sort of pronounce it slightly different, but that's my Americanized version.
That sounds pretty good, John. I'm looking at the spelling of this, and it does look very complicated. So I think it sounds pretty good.
Yep, so I did do my homework on that, I promise. He plays the drums, and he does a little bit of sampler work, too. You've got Debbie Gouge on the bass, and you've got Belinda Butcher as the female vocalist, and also on the guitar as well. As I mentioned before, there are lots of members earlier than this, but we're going to go with that as the primary groups, and that's who played on this album. I think we've talked about it several times, but My Bloody Valentine is considered to be one of the pioneers of the shoegaze genre. Shoegaze was named by the British music press because the bands did not do much on stage. They just kind of played, right, and made noise. And so the press said it was like they were, gazing at their shoes. Hence the idea of shoegaze. That's pretty straightforward in terms of how that was connected. Let's talk a little bit about the formation here. So Kevin Shields, it's probably best to start with him because he is sort of probably the most well-known member of the group. In many ways, the creative force in terms of writing the songs and coming up with sort of the vision statement. He is one of the founders, like I said. He was born in New York City before moving to Long Island. And then at the age of 10, although in some places they say 6, but most of the places I've seen it says 10, he moved from New York to Ireland, which he credits as being quite a culture shock, but also introducing him to a lot of new music, because the American music scene he thought was more sort of mainstream, where Ireland introduced him to a lot more underground stuff and just different variety of music. In 1978, he meets our friend Colum at a karate tournament, which I thought was very interesting. True story. It comes up quite a bit. They become friends and they form a punk band, and then they both share a love of the Ramones in particular. The Ramones are a big part of the origin story for Kevin Shields, along with the Beach Boys, and in particular Phil Spector's production, and Brian Wilson's. He records mostly in mono, to give you an idea. Those were seminal influences on him. There were others, but those are the two that, in terms of past influences. But
John, I'm sorry. Were they competing in the karate tournament? Or were they just hanging out at one?
I didn't find any. It's basically they say they met.
So random.
It comes up over and over again that they were at a karate tournament outside of Dublin, and that's where they met.
Amazing.
I probably read as many interesting origin pieces or bio pieces on My Bloody Valentine as any band we've covered, just because I find them to be an interesting group in terms of our journey. But anyway, they do that. They then form a post-punk trio, because why not? It's the 80s, and why not do post-punk? That doesn't really pan out. The post-punk group's name is A Life in the Day. And so shortly after that, Shields and our friend Colum, I'm just going to shorten the name there to Colum so that I don't have to struggle through that name again, for My Bloody Valentine in early 1983, with a gentleman by the name of David Conway, who performed under a pseudonym. It was Dave Stelfox, in case you were wondering. They have a bunch of names until they settle on... They had a bunch before My Bloody Valentine, which I think is a top-tier band name, by the way. But the name comes from a 1981 Canadian horror slasher film. And that's
I've seen that.
From. Yep.
I didn't know it came from that movie, but...
There you go. That's where it comes
It's
from.
about a miner who kills people. It's awesome.
The name of the movie is My Bloody Valentine?
Yeah.
Yes.
And they've remade it too, actually.
Okay.
So they have a lot of different bassists, guitarists, singers, and stuff like that. It's just they're gigging, they're playing, they're mixing different stuff, playing with production techniques, and eventually they get a contract from a record label named as Tycoon Records, and right after they get that, a member of the band, in this case the bassist, or guitarist, I should say, one of the guitarists along with Shields leaves. One of the other members who doesn't join's girlfriend joins the keyboard player, and I'll just kind of cut through all of this. They just decide finally, after opening for REM even on one occasion, that it just isn't going anywhere, and they relocate to West Berlin, Germany, and they end up recording a debut mini called This Is Your Bloody Valentine. Don't really get much attention there. Go to the Netherlands, which they'd spent some time in, and so they're bouncing around, right? They're in Ireland, they're in the Netherlands, then Germany, then back to the Netherlands, and they finally end up in London in the middle of 1985, and this becomes sort of when things start to move in a complete direction. They kind of, the keyboard player, this Tina Durkin they had, left the band, and so there's no keyboard player anymore. And finally Shields just gets Debbie Gouge's telephone number from somebody in London, and they recruit her as a bassist. So we now have member number 3 of the band who ends up on this album, right? So we've got our drummer in Colum, we've got one of our guitarists and vocalists in Kevin Shields, and we've got Debbie Gouge who's playing the bass right now. They're rehearsing, they're gigging. It's interesting because Goose has like a straight up day job. It's just playing on the side, which I always find fascinating. And they end up recording an album called Geek that also does not really go anywhere. They decide, they're thinking one last time. Shields is like, I think we're going to relocate to New York City. They have family there, as you knew, and stuff, but they decide to stick it out in London and they released the new record by My Bloody Valentine, which is sort of their last shot, and it ends up being kind of a minor success. It gets to number 22 on the UK indie charts, which is not exactly huge, but it showed them sort of that they were able to keep doing music, so they commit a little bit more. In early 1987, they signed to Lazy Records. They keep going to these great record companies, right? So this time they're on Lazy Records. It was founded, you guys might know it, by the band The Primitives. Do you guys know The Primitives? Are you familiar? They have a very famous song that I'm certain you guys would know.
It sounds vaguely familiar, but I can't say I'm really familiar with them, so I'm going to say no.
Go way too fast.
Oh, from Dumb and Dumber. That's why. Yeah.
Well, yeah, but I know it from before Dumb and Dumber.
I know it from Dumb and Dumber. Yeah, that's a good song.
So they have a record label, and My Bloody Valentine ends up signing with them. They release a single called Sunny Sunday Smile in February of 1987, and it peaks at number 6 on the UK indie singles chart. So they are starting to now get traction as an indie band to watch. They open as a supporting act for the Soup Dragons, another band that you may be familiar with, right, Matt? That they had a buzz clip back in the day.
Yes, I don't remember what the song is, but I definitely remember that name.
I'm free to do what I want.
Oh, any old time.
Mm-hmm. Yep, that's their big hit. So there's a lot of like overlap.
There we go.
The funny thing is, none of these bands sound like My Bloody Valentine.
Right.
No. Which is why it's very interesting. So finally, after all of this, they are looking for like another lead vocalist and another musician in the group, and they just have had like no success. And finally, he like they put out like one of those ads and stuff, and Shield said that it was kind of a disaster, their things, because he just so happened to mention that he liked the Smiths and their melodies, so he got a lot of vocalists that were trying to be Junior Morrissey's, which did not work out well, and he's like, that's not really what I meant by it, it was more, blah blah blah. So anyway, they end up getting Belinda Butcher, who brings, of course, a feminine voice to the band. Her experience was basically just she'd played guitar as a child and sang a little bit, and she just basically meets Colum on a ferry from the Netherlands and ends up trying out and being in the band. And so they decide to split the lead vocals with her and Shields, and that becomes, along with some guitar tone and the mono production, sort of the calling card of what My Bloody Valentine was to become. And so that takes us right up to this. I won't go too much further, but this takes us to Isn't Anything, and basically their breakthrough at this point. So what should we know kind of about Isn't Anything in terms of leading up to it? Not much. They record it without having much of a theme. They just kind of, the goal was to sort of play loud and show off their like the people they love, right? Elements of all the different groups that they love. A lot of the groups that you, I think, will probably reference are acts that were influential on them. I will not mention them here in case you guys bring them up in your review, and I'm gonna kind of, I think, leave it there because there's a lot of other really interesting stuff about this, but I think really the fun about this album is going to be getting a view from each of you guys of what you think, because this is a rare one where I kind of have no idea what Matt's going to think. I feel like I have a little bit better idea what Josh is going to think, but we've been surprised by each other. So I think the first take gets to go to Josh, who my gut tells me might be a little bit more skeptical of this album than maybe Matt is. Mm-hmm.
You are correct, sir. I did not like this album. It was a tough listen for me, despite being short. Tough listens. I'm guessing they were influenced by Velvet Underground, as every band in the world is, as we know.
Certainly, although they don't reference it as much. They get compared to the Velvet Underground a lot for what they are, but they don't mention it as a primary influence in the way that a lot of others do.
Yeah.
But you can definitely see it through life.
It's clear that, you mentioned this band back when we were talking about Sonic Youth and some of the other kind of noise rock bands.
That is a huge influence on them. Sonic Youth, for sure.
Yeah, definitely. I can hear that. And that's not going to do it any this band any favors for me, and the shoegaze genre as a whole is something I've never really explored, probably avoided on some unconscious level, just by kind of reputation. So I don't think, it's going to become more and more prevalent, obviously, as we get into the 90s. And I think I know a lot of the bands by name, but not necessarily the sound. And it's just, it's really not what I'm looking for in music. The guitar tone you mentioned, that's definitely something that I don't like. The mono, I definitely picked up on the mono sound to it as well. There's not really like feedback per se, but there is definitely kind of like that fuzz, kind of overlay to a lot of this album. I did not like that, and they're playing in a lot of minor chords too, and it does. A lot of the songs kind of do have that drony nature to them, which is always a challenge for me. I feel like the other big thing that kind of was a struggle is there's not really much melody in a lot of their songs. And so that's it, if you have that coupled with the feedback or the droning, I can kind of get behind it more. I think the examples of that were like Mission to Burma, and there's another band that I liked a bit more. Maybe was it Jesus Mary Chain? Maybe, I can't remember, but I'll have to double check that. But they're they're kind of monotone in their singing as well, which is another thing. Both Kevin Shields and Belinda Butcher didn't really connect with me on their vocal delivery, and when they trade off, that's kind of another comparison with Sonic Youth too, is between Thurston Moore and Kim Gordon singing as well. But that's overall kind of the impressions of the album. Some of the things I did like were on the song Softest Snow. I like the bass on that. That stood out for me, but then it was kind of overlaid with the feedback or the sound that they were trying to do. And so then it lost me. The song No More Sorry has whatever they're doing with the guitars makes it kind of sound like there's a harp playing or some sort of like string instrument, which I thought was interesting. I like the song Nothing Much to Lose, which is kind of more towards the end of the sound that kind of had a more aggressive feel to it too. I think that's the other thing too, is this band is kind of really kind of laid back and laconic in their sound, and they don't really like rock out that hard. They just kind of, I guess they do just kind of stare at their shoes and like try and blend in with the sonic, with the noise. And so they're not being, it's hard for me to latch onto it as well. That's kind of, it was a struggle, this band. I'm hoping, since we're covering them 2 more times, maybe something will, maybe they'll change a little bit, or something will pop out that I enjoy more. But this one was a thumbs down for me, unfortunately.
All right. So, I was really looking forward to listening to this album, because it's a band that I've heard of a lot, and I've known Loveless, and that's the one that always kind of comes up. So I'm interested to hear that record as well. And so traditionally, like the term shoegaze, I wasn't terribly familiar with that till, I don't know, maybe like 10 years ago or so. I didn't really ever hear that before, and the way it was associated with bands, that I kind of felt like, oh, I think I kind of like that. I like the like some of the bands that I heard be associated with it. And so it's a really interesting record for me. I agree with Josh. I think that there's not really melody here, right? There's not really traditional song structure is kind of not really there, right? So which, I mean, and as you guys know, usually that's something that I'm looking for. Like, give me a hook, give me a chorus, give me, something that I can hang my hat on. And you don't really see that here. This is more of a sonic experiment. And Sonic Youth definitely stood out as like a comparison point. Definitely the Velvet Underground as well. and then stuff like that's just got like that noise rock, like a Jesus and Mary Chain. Although that was way more melodic than this. Yeah. So my initial reaction to this was just really, this was a hard listen the first one or two times, because I think I was expecting it to be a little bit more like a Jesus and Mary Chain kind of thing, with a little bit more hooks and melody, and you just didn't really find that. There's a couple of parts, that's a little bit more traditional. Like the last track, I can see it, but I can't feel it. There's a cool guitar part, and when you wake, you're still in a dream. There's like a there's a little bit more of a structure there. But the more I listened to it, the more I just became okay with just what was being presented and just kind of just let it be. To me, this is an easier listen than a Sonic Youth. I think one of the issues that I might have with the Sonic Youth is that what is it, the down tuning or the off tuning, whatever. I forget what the term that you use for that, John.
Well, they both use open tuning. I can tell you that right off the bat. But
this doesn't seem as
because Shields is messing around with the tremolo. Like that's like the hallmark of his sound. He's taking the tremolo and just
what does that mean? What do you mean? What's the tremolo?
So like in terms of, oh boy, that's going to be like a whole.
Okay,
I'll save that for when I give my
All
take.
Right.
But yeah, and whereas what Thurston Moore is doing is different, right? They're both using distortion, they're both using pedal effects, they're both using open tuning, but they're doing it in slightly different ways. This
to me is more. This is more of an inviting sound, even though it's a heavy, it is a melancholy kind of thing sound as well. But it's at the same time it's also more inviting because I don't know, it's a more pleasant sonic experience for me than it is like than the Sonic Youth. Although they share similar elements because there's droning here. It's kind of just like staying with the sound and like just playing the guitar in this one way, and it's not really varying much. But I kind of, that's one of the things I liked the most about this was just the way it sounded. Like I like their choices of sound better than I do a Sonic Youth. And I am hearing, I wasn't hearing so much, they're drawing from this previous band before. My experience was more of, man, this just sounds so much like just a hodgepodge of so many indie, alternative rock, that would come after it, both in the 90s and beyond. And it was hard for me to even pinpoint specific artists that were really standing out because there were just so many. It's definitely, I can see why they're so influential because I'm hearing various elements of this throughout, a lot of the music and bands that I have come to love over the years. And just the sound, right? Just like this kind of avant-garde sound. I mean, this is an avant-garde kind of band, but yeah. But to me, there's something just more, that there's still something appealing that I can just put this on and kind of have it a little bit as like this background music that's somewhat abrasive, but not really, just a little bit, I like kind of the bass, like some of the bass, the deep bass parts that they're playing here are pretty cool that Goosh is playing. So yeah, I think this album's a grower for me. I still feel like I would probably need more time for it. I don't know if I'm going to get to the point where I'd say I love this, but I'm intrigued. And as I listened to it several times this week, and as time went on, I found like little parts here, little parts there. I was like, okay, that part's cool. Like I'm liking that a little bit more than the last time I listened to it, but it's certainly not for everybody. It's a harsh kind of experience, but at the same time, it's also something that I'm totally fine listening to. I'm not always going to want to go to this well, but I do think there's enough here for me to give it, at least for now, a slight thumbs up, and I think it's got the potential to have a much higher thumbs up upon subsequent listens. And I am curious because I know that the next one, Loveless, is the big one that they're known for. And but as someone that kind of likes a little bit more of I'm okay with a little bit avant-garde and whatnot. I think that there's something about this, the tone perhaps, or just what they're doing in the studio, what they're doing with the effects. It's enough for me I'm not being turned away from it. So I think the more I can spend with this, the more I might like it. But yeah, I'm gonna go with a thumbs up on it. And just if only there's so much that comes out of this later on that it's a pretty cool record.
So real quick before I jump in, like I want to mention that while they both use alternate tunings, Matt, I was doing a little research to kind of explain it a little bit. Shields, like the biggest thing about My Bloody Valentine is his guitar tone, and that's that like reverb and where it's like his own unique style of playing the guitar. It's called the glide guitar, his technique, and basically he just holds the vibrato bar while playing. So he's strumming while holding the vibrato bar, right? And that's the tremolo sound. It's this pitch that like it's described as wavering, right? Or reverse reverb is the description, and that's really the his sound, right? Whereas Thurston Moore's kind of just playing around with all kinds of alternate tunings, right? Like different stuff, but there isn't like one sound with him, right? He's going into down tunings, he's going into off tunings, alternate. Like Kevin Shields sort of always is in this vibrato thing while also messing around within the strumming. He's also using pedal effects and, you know, feedback, right, and stuff like that at different times. Less so on this one than other ones. So just
it's very echoey too. Whatever effects that they're throwing in there, it's like whether it's on the vocals or on the guitars or whatever. It's a lot of echo. It's cavernous. Yeah.
One of the things too with the way he plays is designed to be. That's why like two of them have tinnitus, right, and like stuff like that, and they can.
Was that like hearing issues?
Yeah,
like the ringing in your ears.
Oh
like
yeah,
they basically develop. It's not a surprise that, but I feel like all these bands like this, the shoegaze or the noise rock stuff, I always go last. And this album's awesome. This is a great freaking album. And like I knew, I don't know, there's just something that I guess connects with this. First of all, like I say it every time, but I'll say it again. This is such a good headphones album. Like it's just so, it locks you in. And for me, the sound just envelops you. There's certain songs like When You Wake You're Still in a Dream, Feed Me With Your Kiss, the two songs I picked, where there's just these guitar parts that it returns to these really appealing guitar riffs for me that like while
that's
like
a cool
sound
riff,
is washing around it, right? And like I love the fact that like underneath you can peel back and there's this basic song structure, right, that looks like pop music, but around it there's the chaos and the swirling winds and sort of like I almost compare it to like weather, right? There's thunderclaps, there's lightning, there's wind and stuff, there's blowing around, right? The stillness underneath it. And occasionally they let you see the stillness, but for the most part, right, there's like a organized chaos would be what I would say good shoegaze music is. And I just like to play this music really freaking loud, and I like to listen to it in headphones, and I like to just not really do a whole lot except just have this on, just, you know, barraging my ears kind of, because it's pretty and also intense. It's the mix. It's what like really good punk rock or metal, you know, it just, there's an intensity to it, but also a beauty underneath it. And this music always, I think each time I listen to this album, I listened to this album 3 times this week, and each time I listened to it, it was like a different experience, because each time it kind of hits me different, which is sort of like what I notice about shoegaze. Like sometimes it seems the more you listen to it, the more normal it becomes, to me at least. Whereas the first time you listen to it, it's like it assaults you, right? But then the second time, it's not assaulting you anymore. It's kind of like you know what's coming, so you're able to engage with it. And by the third time, I was friends with it, right? But even when it's assaulting me, I like it because it's challenging me. And just, I don't know what it is. This sort of down tune, alternate tuning, you know, type of sound, and the experimentation just really speaks to me. I don't think it's ever boring. And yeah, Matt, I mean, my gosh, like you can see elements of this all over
it's everywhere.
It's like we said before, it's definitely influenced by all the groups we've mentioned, like My Bloody Valentine, Public Image Limited, like what they were doing, some of the avant-garde stuff like Birthday Party, and you know, all of that stuff. The Stooges, if you want to go back in time, have elements of this with the feedback. Certainly the earlier Sonic Youth, and even the Sonic Youth we've done recently, Jesus and Mary Chain. I mean, these are easy hallmarks when you listen to. I don't think we're reinventing the wheel, but there's a lot of people that delved into what My Bloody Valentine was doing in the 90s. And I don't think I can stress enough how influential this band is. There are a lot of artists, and especially the type of indie artists, right, that have credibility within the community, right, who love My Bloody Valentine, right, and look at their music as sort of seminal. Another band, by the way, we didn't mention who could be tied into this is Dinosaur Jr. and Jay Mascis. And I know he's always said that Kevin Shields is sort of his like ultimate duo, duet partner, right, like along the way. But there's a lot. I think it's Dinosaur Jr. kind of appealed to both of you guys. It sounds like a lot more than My Bloody Valentine did.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But I think this is sort of a deconstructed version of what Dinosaur Jr. was doing, right? Like Dinosaur Jr. is a lot more moored into traditional pop structures.
Yes,
and I just
sure.
think the biggest difference, Josh, I think what I'm seeing is that you need sort of, although not always, but in general, you are more comfortable in, I guess, what we would consider to be the traditional pop melodies, sensibilities, right?
Yeah,
Structure.
I think so.
Yeah, and Matt, I know you don't necessarily need it, but you need a sense of melody, right?
I mean, that's usually, but that's why this is an interesting record, because this could easily have fallen into the same category as how I feel about Sonic Youth. But there's something about them and what they're doing, and you're right. This is more straightforward.
This is an
Sonic Youth is
what Sonic Youth is doing. And by the way, we haven't even gotten to like Daydream Nation, Goose, Sister, Murray,
right.
All these
so
albums,
yes, that's true.
You have to listen to before you. I'm not going to say you're going to love it, but I think you have to listen.
I might like it more.
Totally,
the Sonic Youth that we've covered up, the Sonic Youth that we've covered up until this point. I think you're right. I think it's certainly been more varied, right?
Way more experimental than
and this is why this is an interesting record for me, because I can't really. It's hard for me to put my finger on what it is that I like or what it is that I'm still grappling with. But it's intriguing, it's interesting. You're right. It's certainly not boring. But I think the more I've listened to it, and I've listened to it more than 3 times, I find it interesting that like you can get from. Did you wait? Actually, first, John, my question: did you know this record before today? Before this week? Okay, all right.
On. I mean, you don't think I know this stuff? This is like right up my alley.
Okay, all right. So that's why you were like the first time I listened to it was like an assault, and then like by the third time you had this. I need
even if I haven't listened to it, it's each time. This is not music where I go back later and go, ooh, track number 6. Let me, memorize it in my brain. That's not what I listen to. This type of music completely different than when it's like track 3, track 6, track 8 really speak to me, right? It's one piece of music to some degree.
Yeah. And so that's for me. It's like this is a record that I would need to sit with more. This is a little bit like homeworky for me, but I'm okay with this homework because it's not so off-putting. Like I think this is going to grow on me even further. I could see the potential.
You can't be doing anything else while you're listening to this, which I know is hard for people sometimes because it demands a certain level of attention. Mm-hmm. And like I think most people like their music when they're doing other things, but for this you got to strap some headphones on and you either got to listen or you got to close your eyes and just let it be. Like, and I understand why people may not want that to happen, but like for me that is what draws the most out of this style of music.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't ever listen to our music just by itself. I try not to do other stuff that's too
makes sense
intellectually like intensive, so I can at least pay attention. But I can't. I never just kind of listen.
I'd be fascinated. Is that something you think you can't do, or just you haven't done?
Oh, I think I could do it. It's just I'm trying to maximize my efficiency in terms of my time.
You're a multitasker, Josh.
Well, and I am too. I don't know for sure. I wonder if that's going to always, like, if you have to try it that way to truly write it off, or no. If I'm just, maybe
I will have to for these certain bands. Yeah, I'm looking at I can't help but look at the followed by and the all music related artists.
Who does it say?
There's a ton, and a lot of them I don't recognize. But I guess the closest one that I do kind of see a similarity to would be Black Rebel Motorcycle Club, which I do like a lot. So
it's like Slow Dive, right? That's probably on there, and Smashing Pumpkins certainly.
I think what a lot of artists. I think what a lot of artists did with this is it's more
Silver Sun pickups, right?
Like, sure. They took like the sound, like this is like this distorted, like full sound, that
Silver
you can
Sun
get from an amplifier.
glide guitar sound if you listen to it. It's very
Yeah,
similar.
so like you can take that kind of that edgy, cacophonous sound and then like put it towards something that's got more of a melody or more of a structure or whatever, And I think that seems to me to be a big part of their influence is like, hey, there's some cool sounds that you can get out of this, if you play it right. But there's all the other bands that did something kind of similar, like the shoegaze. It's just like because I don't think Silver Sun Pickups they're more of an alt rock band, that just has.
But they use that reverb guitar, is all over their sound.
Yeah,
if
but
you listen
like
to
them and Black
Panic
Rebel,
Switch, it's a more tight version of a little bit more poppy version of what this album is.
Oh, it's way more poppy. I mean, it's got verses and choruses and melody. Yes,
is right out of this.
But that's what I'm saying. You're taking the sound, you're taking the sonic part of it, and then you're putting more of the structure and the chorus and the melody and that stuff, and that's what you get with those. But you're not getting. This is a more stripped down version of that. This is a rawer form of that.
And actually, the lead singer, even though he's male, sounds a lot like Belinda Butcher when you think about it. But anyway, I'm just going off on a tangent there. But yeah, when you hear Smashing Pumpkins, another one like Billy Corgan's voice. Yeah.
Dandy Warhol's too is also on this list. I can kind of see
There's
that as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's that. It wouldn't come to mind immediately, but yeah.
But it's the sound of indie. It's the sound of indie rock, very much like Sonic Youth is too. Even though as much as I don't really care for them,
sure. Yep.
Sonically, you can. It's paving the way for all the stuff that's coming down the line. And again, it's not just we talk about the '90s for sure, but even beyond then, even some of the indie bands that are out today, it's like, a debt to this. Yeah. So I'd like to listen to this more. And yeah, John, I think you're probably right. I didn't listen to it listen to it like I usually do when I'm at work or walking my dog.
You're wrong. I'm just saying that to me, this style of music, and I, like I said before, I can't ever recommend feedback / distorted down tune, alternate tuning, because for people that don't like it, it's like poison, right?
Yes.
To the point where they can't comprehend people liking it. It's almost, you can't, people I've learned who don't like this type of music almost believe that people who like it are pretending to like it because it's so unappealing to them. But all I can say is that if you do like this, it speaks to you in a way, and there's nothing, and for me, I just know when I hear this type of sound. Now, I obviously I knew to go into that lane here, but there's going to be some bands we cover that I'm going to be like, ooh, okay, this is that type of album. I need to transition into a certain way of listening, and I completely understand. But for me, night and when I'm winding down is when I can listen in the way
I see that
this demands. Yeah. So
this is
and with headphones because you lose a lot playing it out of a speaker too. I think you just hear so much more of this type of music in headphones. So.
Well, and this is also this is why it's called noise rock, because this is just noise. This isn't music, this is not, it's not going to be on any top 40 radio station or anything like that. This is a very unique kind of thing. And you're right. This is a type of music that you probably have to be in the right mood, the right place, the right time to experience it the way that it's supposed to be. And, I can't say that I did that at any time this week when I listened to it, but I could see the benefit of that. Definitely.
So is Loveless, I know you guys keep saying that accidentally, is that a higher profile album? Do you
Loveless is often considered one of the top 10 albums of the 90s. It's kind of considered to be there. And then they were off for forever. And they didn't release, I think MBV didn't come out till 2007. Because I could
13.
definitely remember plucking it. Was it 13?
2013.
Wow, yeah, okay, gosh. It's even it was rumored for forever, right? And pieces of it would leak or you'd hear about it. And so, I guess, wow, 13. Jesus.
Josh,
so.
Loveless is number 73 on the Rolling Stone list of all time, and it's number 21 of all time on Best Ever Albums. Yeah. So it's the
I bought the MBV album. It's one of the last albums I can remember buying a CD of, before it was all digital. Yeah. So
wow.
fourth highest rated album in the 90s. So that's the one I've always seen but I never listened to. You know what I mean? So I am excited for that one, but because I'm seeing promise here.
Well, and we're honest enough that if people don't like it, right, we're not going to say we like it just because. Like, that's the cool thing about this, and I think what people give us credit for. We're going to give our honest take.
And I kind of remember having a similar, maybe a similar reaction when we did Kate Bush, and we did Hounds of Love, and I was like, oh, that's going to be the big one. And I actually think I liked The Howling. Was that the one before that?
The Dreaming.
The Dreaming. Why did I call it that? Whatever. I like The Dreaming better than Hounds of Love. That's my recollection. So, yeah. So maybe that'll be the same for this. But I would need more time with this.
So we say thumbs up, thumbs in the middle, thumbs down. Would that be the 3 takes?
I'd give it a slight thumbs. No, I'm going to go slight up on this because I definitely it's crossed that. It's at least crossed that hurdle for me.
Gotcha.